stage right now. Make some noise for Tim Finnegan, everybody. Let's hear it.
What up, people? How y'all doing tonight?
Hey!
All right, well, that's what I like to hear. Well, my name's Tim Finnegan, but besides being known as Tim Finnegan, I could also be known as Neil Page. And I'd like to tell you guys a fucking story about how I was trying to get home to Chicago from a business trip in New York for Thanksgiving. Now, I was in a fucking business meeting that was running late, and I had a 6 o'clock flight to catch at the JFK airport. I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this meeting running so late? But yeah, it was rush hour, and as soon as I left the meeting, I was trying to wave down a taxi, and then I tried to bribe a man for a taxi, and I got the money, and I got the taxi, but then someone stole my cab, a guy with a big long fucking trunk. So then I got in a bus and got to the airport after the guy stole my cab, and I was there at 5:58 p.m. just before my 6 o'clock flight was supposed to leave, but when I got there, I realized that my flight was delayed. Now, what happened was, while I was waiting for my flight at the gate, I actually saw the guy who stole my cab when I recognized his trunk, and I confronted him for stealing my fucking cab, and I mean, he apologized and he offered to buy me a hot dog and a beer, but I just said no. And then once we boarded our flight, I got assigned to a general seat on the plane when I thought I was supposed to have first class. First I got in an argument with the stewardess, but then I went to my seat. But then, funny coincidence, when I sat down, I was next to the guy who stole my cab. Now, when I met the guy who stole my cab, he introduced himself, said his name was Del Griffith, and that he sells shower curtain rings. And then I introduced myself, and I told him I'm Neil Page. And he was fucking talking my ear off on the plane. And I told him, I'm not much of a conversationalist, I just like to finish an article. And he's like, please don't let me stand in your way. Last thing I want to be remembered as is an annoying blabbermouth. So, yeah, Del and I were like getting to know each other on the plane, and then I was trying to finish an article, people were sleeping on the plane, but then when we thought our flight was supposed to land in Chicago, there was a blizzard in Chicago, so then our flight landed in Wichita, Kansas. So we spent a night at a hotel in Wichita. At first I tried to call a bunch of hotels, and I called my wife Susan Page to let her know what was going on and that it was going to be later than I thought. But then Del booked us a room. We got a motel, but we happened to be in one bed. And then, Del and I got in a fight, when he was making noises at night when we were trying to sleep. But then we eventually went back to sleep. But then a robber came in and robbed us. And then the next morning when we woke up, Del kissed my ear. He was like, hey, why'd you do that? And he's like, why are you holding my hand? I'm like, where's your other hand between? And he's like, between two pillows. I'm like, those aren't pillows. And then, we got in a fucking fight. And then Del and I went to a diner for breakfast. But then when I was about to pay the bill, I noticed I had no cash in my wallet. And then at first I thought Del stole my money, and at first I accused him of it, but then Del gave me his wallet and told me to count what was in his wallet, and then I saw his wallet was empty too. And then that was when we realized we were robbed. I'm like, holy shit. So when we got then we got a train ticket to get on an Amtrak train. We were taking a train, but then it broke down in Jefferson City, Missouri. But then me and Del reunited, and then I carried his trunk, and then we got on a crowded bus to St. Louis, and while we were on the bus, Del sang the Flintstones theme song, and everyone sang along. And then when Del and I arrived at the St. Louis airport, we grabbed lunch, and then we went our separate ways again. But then I was supposed to rent a car from the Marathon Car Rental Agency, but there was no car there, so I ran across the fucking highway down the fucking runway, and then when I got to the Marathon Car Rental agent, Edie McClurg was working there, and she's like, hey, I'm in the Marathon, how may I help you? And I'm like, you can start by wiping that fucking dumbass smile off your rosy fucking cheeks. Then you can give me a fucking automobile. I was fucking pissed off, and I was like, look, I want a fucking car right fucking now. She's like, may I see your rental agreement? And I told her I threw it away, and she's like, oh boy. I'm like, oh boy, what? And she said, you're fucked. So then I was even more fucking pissed off, and I tried to get a taxi to Chicago, but then, Del saved my ass. I got in a car with him, and then we kept going. But then when we were driving at night, there were two drivers who was like, hey, you're going the wrong way. And Del thought they were just drunk, and I was like, oh, he's drunk, how would he know where we're going? But then we drove between two fuck trucks, and then the car lit on fire, but then we got the car back, and we went to a motel that night. Now, the next morning, when it was Thanksgiving morning, me and Del got back on the road and we drove, but then a police officer pulled us over and he took our car, but then me and Del got in a milk fucking truck, and it was fucking awesome, and then it got us back to Chicago. And then by the time we got to Chicago and that truck, we parted ways. We got to the LaSalle and Van Buren CTA station, and I thanked Del for getting me home. And then as we parted ways, I got on the CTA train. And then when I was on the train, I remembered what Del said, like when he said it, that he hasn't been home in years. I remember him saying that, and then I went back to the train station, and then I saw Del sitting at the train station, and I was just said to Del, like, wait, I thought you were going home. What are you doing here? And then Del explained that he doesn't have a home, and that his wife Marie's been dead for 8 years. So then I invited Del over to my house for Thanksgiving, and then I introduced my family, my wife, Susan, my kids, my family, to my new friend Del Griffith when he came to my house for Thanksgiving, and we all had a happy Thanksgiving after all, and it was fucking awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much my story about how I was on a cool travel adventure with my friend Del Griffith for Thanksgiving. That's my time. Thank you for watching. Happy fucking Thanksgiving. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Keep it going for Tim Finnegan, a.k.a. Neil Page. This is a mixed media mic. You can do comedy or you can recap movies from the 80s. You can do whatever you want here. I literally just watched that yesterday. Do you follow me on Letterboxd? What is happening right now? What I learned when I just watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles the other day is that there's no Oxford comma in it. It's planes, trains, and automobiles. And I don't have a joke for that. That's just something I saw, and it's my personality for the next week. I hope everybody's on board.